normal Thursday, you know, just the normal Thursday.
Yeah, just teaching.
All right, welcome everyone. Good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. Pretty excited about this. That's Tessa Chaplin in the back, and April, you're off to the side, so we got to move April to her right. April McNee is going to give us a tour. Keep moving over, April.
Oh gosh.
More. There we go. There's April. That's April McNee right there, and that's Tessa in the background. And they're going to be the voices you hear for the next hour. April will give us all the feedback, and Beth is off camera but here, and so we'll be able to answer your questions. Plenty of time to ask all the questions you want. That's what Tessa is here for. And we'll go through the thing, and if we get some time at the end, we'll get a little tour of the building, so you get a chance to see what all is going on there. So, and of course, thanks to Kim and Sassy Jack's Stitchery for sponsoring the show. We really appreciate it. And all the other usual announcements we'll save for Friday night. Join us Friday night, and we'll update you on all that. But I'm just going to shut up and get out of the way and let April do her thing and get to learning about all this Italian embroidery. So I'm out. Go, April.
Okay, out Gary. Hi everyone, lovely to meet you all. My name's April. I'm the exhibition and gallery coordinator here at Gallery 76 in Sydney. And we are Sydney's only dedicated textile art gallery. So we have exhibitions every month, but this month we have an exhibition called Remembering Ricamo, which is all about the different Italian needlework styles that exist. And with me we have the lovely Tessa Chaplin, who is one of our members here at the Embroiderers Guild, and she is a bit of an aficionado on Italian needlework, and she also owns one of the most beautiful embroidery shops here in Sydney called Stitch at Willoughby. So Tessa will be with me answering some questions. Hopefully we'll be able to answer all of yours, and if not, we'll try and point you in the right direction. But for now, let me take you around the gallery. Okay, so I'm just going to switch that camera. Oh dear. Does that work? Hi, Tessa. Okay, so over here we have started the exhibition, and we're looking at Assisi work. So Assisi you may have heard of, you know, Francis de Assisi, the famous saint. But Assisi work is quite well known, and it's sort of famous for this, I suppose it's sort of negative space. So you've got a lot of cross stitch on the making the pattern, and the white space you see there is the linen fabric, and then it's outlined in something called Holbein stitch.
Yes, which is double running stitch.
Double running stitch. So,
and this is actually a big piece.
I'll zoom out,
so
and you can...
Usually we don't find pieces this large. It's quite impressive. It's taken a long time to do all this background.
Yeah, so this is all cross stitch. So you can imagine how many hours this would take. And this is actually a piece from our collection. We have an historic collection on site, and this was purchased by one of our members' grandmothers in Assisi many decades ago. So it's a fairly old piece. And it's definitely the largest piece we have of Assisi work.
April, can
Yes.
you go back to that and zoom in and hold so we can see the stitch that's on the edge and talk about that stitch a little bit?
The stitch on the edge. Oh, the Holbein stitch. Okay, we can talk a lot about that.
Yes.
So
yeah, just hold right there. Good.
it goes by a few different names. So in Italy, it's also known as, I think it's Punto di Chiara, after St. Clair of Assisi. So this was a style often worked by the poor Clares in convents. And so it's known as, St. Chiara stitch in Italy, and also Volterrano, I think, in Volterra, which is a town in Tuscany. And they use this stitch. And so in Florence, it's called Volterrano, it's called St. Chiara, we call it Holbein, but, you know, you can call it whatever you want, really.
Now
that you said it was...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Double running stitch?
Double running stitch.
Yeah.
And that piece done in silk, cotton?
This is done in cotton. So historically, it would have been done in silk back when the nuns were working it, but this is sort of a revival style that happened in the 20th century. So if I quickly bring you around the side, I can show you a more traditional piece. We only have one. Sorry, it's going a bit too fast there, aren't I? So this little piece here is an unfinished piece, but it's worked in not cross-stitch, but long-armed cross-stitch, which would have been the traditional one back, a few centuries ago. But there was a revival of Assisi style in the 20th century, and at that point they literally instituted an organization to try and revive this style. Previously, it hadn't been called Assisi work, but it was revived in Assisi in the 20th century, and they switched it to cross-stitch to make it easier. The patterns were then counted rather than sort of free design to make it, again, more accessible, and it became hugely popular again. So cross-stitch is what you'll see in most pieces, but on really old pieces, you would see the long-armed cross-stitch.
Okay, and can you go back to that long arm?
Yep.
Go back to that long arm cross stitch so we can get a sense of the texture from that.
Okay, see how close I can get.
Yeah, just hold tight on there because it gives a different texture.
Yeah, it's almost like a more full, full space with the long arm. Having said that, if I just zoom over to the right, this is a revival piece, and this is done in traditional cross stitch, but you can see they're very close stitches, so it fills out the space really nicely. And above it is a lot more, a much larger cross stitch. So the effect is still the same, but it's a little bit more geometric.
So traditionally, was it done in just one color?
Tessa, do you have any?
It was done in the one colour. Or it was done in one colour with the black outlining.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think often greens and reds, Greens, reds.
Greens and reds.
Yep.
And these little tassels here are very particular to Assisi.
So the little 3 tassels. So particular in that they normally sort of decorate Assisi work, or?
Yes, so it's found pretty much only on Assisi work.
Yeah. The Italians love their tassels, as you will discover today.
Okay, can you show more of that one with the tassels?
The little blue one,
Is
absolutely.
And the tassels are just purely decorative, or are they symbolic in some way?
They're decorative.
Purely decorative.
Okay.
So beautiful little blue bag there.
So that Holbein stitch then is effectively our back stitch, back stitch. Only done.
And not so much a back stitch. It's a one row of running stitch, and then you come back the other way and fill in the holes that you've left on the first run.
Oh, okay. Now is that one has a more open look? Is that a long arm or conventional cross stitch?
Conventional cross stitch again. Everything except that one little green sample is conventional cross stitch.
Okay.
And they normally have quite sort of mythological or heraldic imagery. So, mythological creatures, dragons, birds, griffins, that kind of thing is quite common. It's got that sort of quite medieval look to it. So you can see this sort of, I don't know what this creature is. Some kind of dragon-ish creature there.
And are as the work around the edges, just the line work around the edges, is that a later development, or has that always been part of the standard design?
Yeah, it's
it's to give you the fine detail.
No, I mean like at the top. No, at the top
the
there.
decorative around the edge. Is that traditional or?
This is traditional.
Okay, so because often it would have been used to decorate. Initially, it was ecclesiastical items, but over the years and cuffs, collars, so dress items, also traditional dress, I think, from the area. And then I think it sort of became a bit more secularized over time, and people used it for household items. But originally it was ecclesiastical and then, dress items and household. So I'd love to have a dress in Assisi work if I've ever got any volunteers to stitch several meters of fabric,
Yeah.
So Yvette wanted to ask, are the edges drawn thread then?
There is drawn thread here. Do you want to talk about something, Tessa? We'll see a lot of drawn thread work today, so it's very typical of the Italians.
Yeah, and in these pieces here, it's a very simple antique hem stitch. So some of the pieces we'll see later are a lot more complex and beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, so
and are we? Sorry, April. Are we doing all of that on basic linen? What kind of ground cloth do we typically stitch those on?
Basic linen, and again, you'll have books saying this stitch or this count, and then you'll meet Italians saying whatever they had at home they stitched on.
Okay.
So there's preferences and there's good things to do, but also there's that kind of very Italian slapdash style of we'll make it work. I think at work here.
Okay. All right.
Oh, sorry. God, I got to not do that. Let's head over to the next stitch, which is one of my favorites. So this is a style of stitch called Castel Guidi, and this is very, I suppose, typical of Italy in that what you discover in looking at Italian needlework is that it's immensely regional and sort of based around townships. So it's not like Italy has one style. Each individual town has its own variations and styles. And Castel Guidi is a little town in Tuscany who've developed their own specific style of stitch. So Castel Guidi work is I'm gonna not as good a job at explaining this as Tessa. It's a raised stem stitch, and it's very unique. Tessa, do you want to talk a little bit more about the history of this? It's
So you can pick a Castel Guidi piece by this main thick shape, so known as the bastogne, which is a stick.
Let me call it.
And that is.
I'll just zoom in on that little column
made
piece.
From many layers of thread or a thicker cord, and it's couched in place. And then over the top of the couching are many smaller couching stitches, and these are used as the base to do a raised stem stitch. And you keep on doing the raised stem stitch around the cord until the cord's completely covered. And most of your Castel Guidi pieces start with that cord.
And then they sort of decorate out from there. So it's a fairly historical style. It was created in the 1890s by two sisters in Castel Guidi called the Morelli sisters. And it was popular right through to the 1930s when World War II broke out. And then it was sort of largely forgotten until the 1990s when, again, there was a revival. And there's now a club in Castel Guidi called Club del Ricamo di Casale. And they are working hard to revive this style. All of these pieces are loaned by one of our members, Effie Mitrofanus, who is sort of one of the world experts in Castel Guidi, and she went there and wrote a whole book on it. So Effie Mitrofanus's book is probably one of the go-tos if you want to learn about Castel Guidi stitch. And so, yeah, all these pieces are hers. These two are vintage. They're 1920s or 30s purses. And again, you can see the little tassels. These are a little different. They're sort of bobble tassels rather than just straight thread. You've also got this little vintage bag, which has got a triangular shape, which is quite unusual. Really beautiful stitching there.
Yeah, April, can you just go in there real close and just hold on that so we can appreciate the detail? It's because it's amazing to me. And maybe Tessa can take us through that a little bit, Tessa.
So many of the motifs are based on the vineyards, the gardens, the fruit, and the natural surroundings of the areas, which is why you get the scrolling, the flowers, the wheat sheaves, that sort of thing. That's inspiration from nature. And it's worth noting while we're talking here that after World War II, there was a mass exodus of Italian people from Italy to all around the world, which is why for a long time there was no embroideries. And at one stage, possibly a lot of these techniques, it was worried that people would forget how to do it and no one would have the knowledge. And as April was talking about the revivalists, it's a real concerted effort to make sure that these techniques of embroidery are going to remain alive and be passed down.
Okay,
And
can
so
you?
a lot of the Italian, yeah?
Sorry,
No, go
Gary,
ahead. Go ahead. Keep going.
I'll jump back in.
Okay, so a lot of the Italian interest now has come from Italian ladies living in Australia, in America, and going back to Italy and engaging with the older residents to learn the techniques. And that's why there's such a big revival. And that's why some of the really good books like Effie are being written in Australia, because we have a big culture of different nationalities here.
Yep. And see a few pieces later that are pieces that have been brought to Sydney from Italian families who've moved here in the 1940s.
Okay. April, before you go on, Leslie, yes, we'll get to the yellow bag in just a second. But can you go back to that one and ask Tessa to just kind of take us through the stitch technique again? The other, not that one, the other one that
The
has
one down the bottom?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just
So
take
this
us
one
through
is
that.
gonna be-
Take us through the
Okay,
stitch
and what-
technique again.
Remind us of the
Okay, so Castel Guidi is often worked on this background, which is layers of four-sided stitch in rows. And then on top of that, you're laying your cording or multiple threads to make a little cord, and they're being couched down in place. So underneath here, we would have couching stitches holding this in place. Then you come back with the thread and make many small stitches across. And then you're going to use this as a base to do stem stitch through the stitches you've just put on top in layers until that whole cord is covered.
Do you want to, Tessa, grab Effie's book? And I'm sure there's a picture of that we can show you in the book.
Yeah, that would be great.
Which might just clarify that a little bit. I've just turned you up a lot, Gary, and you just yelled in my ear.
Sorry.
That was my fault. I'm holding the iPad on the speaker button. I'll quickly show you the yellow bag while Tessa grabs that picture out for us. Mostly the work is done on white or ecru, but yellow is also an option. And this is the kind of piece they made in Castel Guidi, mostly for tourists, actually. So it's quite a popular style. Even back in the day, it would be something that was, oh no, lost you.
Nope. Uh-oh.
Back.
There you go.
It would be something that would be exported and made for girls' trousseaux. Agents would take pieces around the country or around Europe to sell. So they are a bit of a market there. And this is the kind of piece they would have made to sell to visitors. So nice and bright and, marketable, I suppose. Tessa's going to show you a picture of that method now. So this is Effie's amazing book. And you can see, hang on if I can zoom in without the shadows, that's your couching down the thread. Then you're covering it to make it a little wider and smoother. Then you're using, again, sort of number of couching threads, and then you're using that as a base to cover the piece. Is that correct, Tessa?
Yeah.
Yes.
So these couching stitches here, when you do the stem stitch, it's a raised stem stitch. So you're actually wrapping around those stitches, not piercing the fabric.
And that's how you get this lovely sort of textured bar that we see in Castel Guidi work.
Okay, and
Of course, it's a nice relief.
The background stitch, is that necessary, or is that just the style? I mean, is it necessarily for the work that goes on top, or is that just the style of background?
it's the style of background. And what you'll see here is, although things are called, Punto di Assisi, Punto di Castel Guidi, which means stitch, normally they are styles rather than stitches. And you'll see the stitches in lots of different ways. So Castel Guidi would more properly be called a style, but there's a lot of sort of gray area there, I suppose.
Okay, and all of this in cotton? I mean, that heavy cording must be cotton.
Yeah, cotton. Is it worked on linen or? But yeah, using cotton. And again, they have a very specific thread width they use, but which I think you can read more about. But it can be within reason worked in a few different widths there.
Okay, and the tassels. Somebody commented on the tassels. They go crazy over those tassels. There's all kinds of varieties.
They do go crazy on the tassels. Yeah, I think on the yellow bag especially, they're the most extra things. So yes, I think more is more, definitely in this style.
April, can you have Tessa show the cover of that book so that people could write that down if they want to buy it?
Absolutely. So it's called Castel Guidi Style Linen Embroidery, and it's by our guild member, Effie Mitrofanis. So, some beautiful pictures in that and close-ups of the work that we're looking at today.
And the knotted tassels are in here too.
Yes, if you want to make very extra tassels.
Of course.
Now that you've all learned a love of tassels, this is and this is on our right. This is a sampler by Effie, who wrote the book, and it's got a lot of styles in it. Let me zoom out. I might need to a lot of different stitches that we'll talk about, including Castel Guidi. So if I zoom in here, we'll do a little bit of a drop and squat. So this is some Reticella, which we'll talk about in a second. As I drop down, you've got more and more cut work. This is, again, more raised stitches on drawn thread work. Zipping down, you've got more Reticella. Oh, that's what it is. And then right at the bottom, you've got this beautiful Castel Guidi edging. So again, those are the bars Tessa was talking about. And again, you can see an actual sort of grapevine image there. So some beautiful Tuscan, Florentine wines, and they're all there. You've even got little chickens up here in the Reticella work. So it's a farmyard, really. And you can see the sort of floral motifs in the Reticella as well. So that's a beautiful piece.
April, can you just start up at the top or as high as you can reach and just really slowly go down?
I'll do my best. Okay, that's nearly the top.
Just go really
slow,
so it can focus in. It's beautiful.
So, this length of piece is again quite traditional because most of these are not being made as art, they're being made as household items. So this kind of length of piece would be used as a curtain inside a sort of twin set door frame. And we'll see a few pieces like that because, if you can picture those kind of French style doors, and then you'd have your little beautiful linen curtains on both sides of it. Okay.
And this style of embroidery is also very hardy. So you can wash it and wash it and wash it, and it will still look beautiful.
Which is not always the case with every embroidery style. So there's our chickens again, drawn thread work, Reticella, and Punto Antico, and Castel Guidi.
Boy.
Whew, okay.
It's amazing, yeah. Oh, and for the record, Beth McGuire, you're a troublemaker, so just for the record. Okay. Beth has me making a dozen bags of this stuff for Christmas for Fiber Talk giveaways. She's just trouble.
Excellent, love that. The right kind of trouble, Beth. Okay, let's head over here. We've got a few different styles here. We'll quickly chat about this one up here. This is called in Italian grosso intaglio, which is large cutwork. It's often known as Reticella in French. And so, as you can see, Italians are very into cut work generally. We'll see a lot more of it. Yeah, this is quite an old style. People often associate it with France because in the 1600s, Cardinal Richelieu, who was the famous villain from the Three Musketeers, put in import taxes on Italian lace and cut work and brought in a whole bunch of embroiderers and lace makers to teach it to the French, so they didn't need to import it. So it's often known by that French name, but that would be used again for household items. So this one's a little table mat. Tessa, anything you want to add about large cut work? It is quite hardy again, so you can see how that would be used for.
And so as far as stitches are concerned, this is all buttonhole stitch.
Okay.
And it's often corded, so buttonhole worked over another piece of thread.
Yeah, again, to get that raised effect. And I've got another example of that over here, which has that cording. So this is a coaster made by one of our members. And again, you can see that raised effect, which sort of, brings it up. If I can zoom in a bit. So that's grosso intaglio. Next style, I think we should probably have a...
April?
Any questions on that one, or are we...
I think,
yes.
Well, yeah, can you just show the rest of the pieces on that panel there?
On that board? Okay. This is a bit of a mixed board. So we've got samplers, coasters, and I wanted to bring in these samplers because I've got quite a few different Italian needlework styles on them. So they're sort of a nice mix, and they're in colour, which is a nice change. So as a sort of reminder, we've got, this is Assisi, again, just a little sample of that one. We've got a whole bunch of cutwork styles here. This little style up here with that sort of bars of satin stitch is called Punto Perugino. And you can see it in the sampler above as well. So that is a typical style of Perugia. It's occasionally seen in Sardinia as well, but Punto Perugino is what it's known as. And the other one on these samplers, which I love, is Bargello work. And that's what I want to talk about next, because this is one of my, again, just the most colourful Italian needlework styles. And it's just, hang on, there we are, that's more like Bargello work. So you've got that sort of beautiful like fading of colours, and unlike a lot of Italian embroidery, Bargello work is colourful. So Bargello work is not really called that in Italy. It's known as Bargello work because it was first discovered in Europe in the Bargello Palace in Florence, and they had a whole bunch of 17th century chairs that were decorated in this, which in the Bargello Palace and often in Italy is known as Punto Ungaro or Hungarian point. So the Italians call it Hungarian point, and we call it Bargello. The Italians also occasionally call it Punto Fiamma or flame stitch, because you can see that sort of flame effect that it has. This is a little, 1930s Bargello purse from our guild collection. I think it's interesting that they call it Hungarian point, because if you go to Budapest, Hungary, and you look at the churches, the roofs on the churches have that very, very similar style done in tiles. And there's sort of myths and legends about Hungarian princesses marrying into, the famous De Medici family of Florence and bringing the style of stitch with them. So there's potential ways that this entered Italy from Hungary, but it's most associated with Florence and with the Bargello Palace. This is an example from the 1920s from the Royal School of Needlework that has also these little floral motifs in the middle. Um, so Tessa, did you want to talk a little bit about the technique of Bargello?
So it's done in a vertical stitch in little rows, and it's very hardy, which is why you'll find it on chairs.
Yeah.
Because it adds a double layer to the fabric. And if you go to museums or old houses, palaces, you might see a row of chairs that are behind the cordon. Most people walk past. But if you happen to be lucky enough to travel to these places in the future, stop and look at the chairs because you'll often see Bargello.
And you can see here, it's, obviously it's a very, nearly 100-year-old handbag. And if this is treated anyway, like the way I treat my handbags, it's worn very well.
Yes. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Focusing. I'll see if I can get a little bit closer for you to get that. Again, you can really see how there's those vertical stitches there, sort of almost interlocking, creating that flame effect.
Yes. It's beautiful. And silk, sorry, I keep asking this question. Silk, cotton, what are we using for threads as a rule?
I think these are silk, these examples, Tessa.
And on chairs, you'll often find wool.
Yeah, so wool work.
Okay,
silk.
all right, yeah.
Depends on what you're making.
Yeah.
And this is a very traditional pattern, but of course, if you've got a piece of fabric or canvas, you can just make it up as you go along.
Yeah.
Right,
It's
right.
very versatile.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Right, so we've done Assisi, we've done Castel Guidi, we've done Bargello.
Before April, somebody had asked, I think they were referring to Castel Guidi, the table piece, wondering how long it took. And of course, that's going to depend on effort, energy, and all those things. But I think the question may be, is that a very slow process to put those together, kind of tedious work in general? It looks like there's a lot, a lot of work there.
Like anything with embroidery, the longest part is the preparation. And once you've done all the preparation, it's actually really good fun to do. And unfortunately, that doesn't take as long as the preparation.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll swing around here.
Now, April,
Yes.
if you want to give your arms a rest, we could stop and you could give us some background on putting the exhibition together, or keep going, whichever.
I'm happy to keep going. If my arms get too shaky, I'll pause.
Okay.
And but thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. So yeah, this is again another style called Punto Antico, which just means antique stitch, and is again, it's a style rather than a stitch because there's a few different stitches used in Punto Antico. And as Tessa and I were chatting before we started here, it can get applied to quite a number of styles, actually. So it's a bit of an umbrella term. Italians will often use it as a miscellaneous antique style. But normally Punto Antico refers to this flat stitch with drawn thread work. So it's sort of like or cutwork. It's a combination style. Do you want to point out some features there?
So these curlicues or curls are very traditional for this style.
Yeah. So
you'll find them on most Punto Antico pieces. You'll find these little curls. So that is usually done with a running stitch, which might be whipped, and then satin stitch over the top. And I'm saying satin stitch, but it's more like a wrap.
Yeah, okay, a wrapped satin stitch.
Just to get it nice and smooth.
So you'll see it's a very smooth style. Like it's this sort of satin stitch, which is called punto piatto in Italian, so flat stitch. And it's got quite a sort of geometric look to it there. And it's combined with this drawn thread work or cut work. So that is sort of the key features of Punto Antico.
Can you go in nice and tight and hold still, or as still as you can, just so we can appreciate what's there? It's amazing.
So what's in the center there of the cutwork piece?
Oh, in the center is a little flower. Hang on, let me zoom into it. So it's called cutwork, or occasionally Reticello, and that can be a much bigger style. So great. But this is just a sort of small little sample of it. So if I zoom out, again, this piece is another curtain piece, more simple, but again, it would be used on the inside of a door or window, as decorative household items. So we've got some more examples of Punto Antico over here, which Tessa can show us. So these bottom three. So these are, again, Tessa, do you want to?
So again, you've got your little curls, and then you've got the drawn work and some cut work. So it's a real combination. And I just really love these motifs, because if you do any hardanger, schwarm, you might find a similarity between Italian, German, Nordic. Yeah. So there's definitely crossing overs of styles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the part that I find fascinating through all of this, is you really see the styles make their way across Europe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Venice being such a massive trading port at that time, you can easily see how it was spread.
A similar style to Punto Antico is this one here, which is a variation of Punto Antico called Punto d'Ago. And so it's very similar. This is some Reticella inserts there, but you've got a little bit more. So this is a variation of Punto Antico from Castel Guidi, which we saw already. And so you see a lot more of that raised work, around cords. And again, up here, this is a beautiful pillowcase with more chickens, with sort of, instead of flat curlicues, you've got the raised ones. So I'll zoom out and show you this pillow. And it's just beautiful. So again, you've got that combination of cut work and surface stitchery, but in this case, with the Punto d'Ago, it's more raised than flat. And I won't lie, I love the chickens. I just keep coming back to them.
What is with the chickens? Is that some kind of a standard motif, or have some meaning? Do we know?
I mean, there is a sort of, especially in Tuscany, in separate regions, the chicken or the rooster is a symbol. They have the black chicken and the white chicken of Siena and the black chicken of Florence. So I know wine better than I know stitches, Gary, and I know that you'll see little black chickens on in Tuscan wines as well. So Tuscan wines and stitches, you'll still see chickens.
Okay.
And I think a rooster is a symbol of fertility.
So for wedding gifts and stuff, that would be an appropriate motif.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a good one. And now one of them, like the styles that I'd say is most typically Italian and you don't really see elsewhere, is a style called Reticella or Reticello. And that is a cutwork style. And one of the most common motifs you'll see is these two little boy and girl figures. And they are all done in cutwork. And so I was speaking to one of our ladies who'd moved here from Italy in the 1940s, and she referred to these figures as bambole, which is dolls in Italian. So when she was stitching them as a child in Sicily, they called them the dolls that they made in the pieces. Mm-hmm. So we've got a whole number. Do you want to talk a bit more about the technique there, and then I'll show a few more examples of Reticella?
So Reticella is what we would refer to as one of the earliest pre-laces, because we're removing threads.
Yep.
And then we're filling in the gaps with needle lace.
Yep. So
you can see probably more on the other pieces, a lot of inspiration from church spires and church windows.
Why don't we go over and
the usual pieces are like a stained glass window.
Yeah. Why don't we head over and you can show me a few more of the church inspirations. We'll just zip to the other side of the gallery, and Tessa can show us a whole bunch more. All these boards are full of Reticella. So,
and if you're thinking this is Italian work, and very devout people spent a lot of time in church, and it seems like perhaps the nuns or the ladies looking out the windows.
Yeah.
That's what I like to think anyway.
Looking out the windows. And
the picos are very reminiscent to me of the spires of a church.
Okay.
And if you look at medieval buildings or churches and you look up, you'll see that the spires have these little nodules on them. And of course flowers.
Of course flowers. And so, yeah, again, white is the traditional style. But as always here, you're seeing a theme. There was a revival, and there's a Italian lady called Giuliana Bonpadre, and she has initiated a style with coloured Reticella, which really brings out the garden to a whole, another level. So these are done by our guild member, but she's using that Giuliana Bonpadre style. So that is like a garden sort of. There's another one up there. And it looks almost like, I suppose almost like flowers growing on a vine or, through a lattice.
Beautiful.
It's really pretty.
Yeah.
Can you, April, just zoom in and just pause and let us just absorb that a little bit?
Just have a little moment? Yes.
Yeah. Just so we can see the detail that's in those stitches. It's quite a bit.
Is it much harder to do in colour than in one colour, to do all the colours in one colour?
It is, because you have to bring that thread in from the edges.
Oh, okay. So they're hiding it in the wrapped cords?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Whereas when you're doing in one colour, the approach is a little bit different.
Okay.
You can see, you can kind of see the color where it comes out of the bars. Oh yeah, I see.
Can I get any closer? Yeah, you can just see, for instance, that kind of little link.
So what kind of thread is being used?
So the threads you can use now are Danish flower threads. You can use cotton embroidery. And crochet cottons, not usually the stranded, because it's too fiddly with the multiple strands.
Yeah, that makes sense. And this style is predominantly associated with Verona at the moment, because that's where sort of Giuliana Bonpadre's school in Italy is. So you see, we're sort of traveling around Italy a little bit.
Yes. Can you, April, I'm sorry. April, can you go back to the bigger white piece that you started with?
I've got, yeah.
Yeah, there, yeah, just so we can appreciate the detail, because repeating those patterns has got to be very challenging to have them look at all consistent.
Absolutely. And I'll bring you over to a very substantial Reticella piece in a second, just around here. So this pink, it looks like tablecloth, but this is actually a bedspread. And this was worked by one of our guild members called Tina Moletti, and she made this as a child in 1945 in Sicily.
Okay, as a child. Okay.
Well, so she and her 3 sisters all made a different piece. It's like the same, in different colours, a different bedspread. And this is all Reticella on this beautiful pink linen. So, again, this is just half of it. You can see on the table, it is a huge piece. And yeah, if you can imagine making a child do that today, that's a very impressive task. So really, and I love how you can see that, because again, it's cut work, so you can see the pinks coming through.
But the depth and thickness of that is so impressive.
Very much so, yeah. So let me just come around here a bit. You've got this huge sort of motif in the middle here. I'm casting a shadow. I'm going to try and do that less. And there's this giant motif right in the middle.
So you can see on the pieces the flow. So each one of these is a square, and then we're moving from one square to another, flowing the thread around. And what I find really amazing is these people would have worked out the pathways of how you produce the flower in multiple squares with very little lighting. I find that fascinating that they were able to do these geometrical mathematics back, when they were, hundreds of years ago, they were doing this.
Yeah, and again, you see that kind of, again, sort of church-like patterns, or they almost look like those Islamic kind of tile patterns as well, in that sort of repeated square shapes. But yeah, I just love this piece.
It's amazing.
So that is the wonderful world of Reticella. And speaking of sort of like traveling styles, as we were before, I want to quickly talk about Macrame, which I'm sure you all know, but is one of the styles most associated with Italy. But I always associate it with, 1970s handbags,
right,
and not really with needle, embroidery. So let me bring you around to the Macrame section. Oh God, stop doing that. Okay, so here's Tessa on matching the red board beautifully.
Beth, do you notice that it sounds so much more sophisticated if you say it macrame rather than macrame?
Yeah, macrame. I love that. You might be saying it more correctly than I am. So macrame or macrame, darling.
Yeah, there. See?
It's very well known. We're very posh here in Sydney. Is a very traditional Italian style, but it actually doesn't originate in Italy. It's actually a Turkish or Arabic style. And here's where we'll get the words mixed up. So macrame is not even an Italian word. It's an Arabic or Turkish word. So mikrama is Turkish for ornamental fringe, and makrama means like fringed towel or clothes. So it came along trading routes and ended up in sort of port cities like Genoa and Liguria. I think, Tessa, you were saying you saw it on the other coast of Italy.
Yes, so just a couple of years ago, I was close to Bari, and all the towels in the linen shops, the household linen shops, had macrame edges, all of them. And it took me by surprise. I had to have a double look because it's definitely macrame.
Yeah, and again, it's knotted, yeah. And so in Sicily as well, down that little island down the bottom, all of like the towels, but also like the donkeys' braids and like harnesses are fashioned out of macrame because, again, there's very strong Arabic links down there. So I'll just zoom into this piece. This is one early 20th century from Genoa. And so you've got these the little tassels. Again, they're quite small, but you can see the macrame in that, that knotted style. And they've also got a little motif up here, which looks a lot like the cutwork, but is actually made from knots. So there's a little, almost like a knight figure, I think I picture him as. And this is all made in macrame or macrame. So again, I definitely associate it with the 1960s and 70s, but actually it reached its sort of peak in popularity during the Victorian period. And that was, again, like a needlework macrame style rather than a, thicker knotted handbag macrame style. So they would do it as a genteel feminine accomplishment to make braids or edges for small works. So anything you want to add to that, Tessa, about style? So there you go. I think it sort of redeems the whole.
Yes.
I guess the only thing that you can see here again is that mixture of styles with your Punto Antico curlicues there.
Yeah, and the drawn thread work, of course, as well.
And that is becoming obvious that the mixture is very common then.
Yeah, definitely. It's very hard to do one without the other. And I wasn't necessarily going to show this, but up here we've just got a sample of, this is a traveling salesman's board. So we were talking before about how styles travel, but this is a sample of needle lace pieces, and women would make these, and then you can see that there is a little pile of them here, and then traveling salesmen would take them around Italy, across the continent, and people would buy them, little inserts, and then insert them into bigger pieces, tablecloths, all that kind of thing. So you can see how the styles travel, quite literally.
Yeah. Can you, that fringe that's over the red there, can you just rest on that so we can take that in?
Yes. So I can zoom on this one. Where is it? Oh, no, I missed it. Here you go.
Because just the kind of the weaving, over weaving is impressive.
Yeah, it creates beautiful texture, doesn't it?
Yes. It's gorgeous.
And again, what you need here is more tassels,
Right.
A different style of tassel. So, yeah, and of course, again, in Morocco and in North Africa, these tassels would be used to finish the end of rugs, at the end of robes and clothing. So you can picture that, on a Turkish rug, as a sort of decorative end, and then you've got to make that link back to Macrame and Italy. So all the traveling styles. I think we haven't got too many needle styles left. Got a few more Reticella examples, and then I want to bring you around to the other side of the gallery, where we've got another drawn thread work style to look at. So just a couple more Reticella pieces to enjoy in the meantime. So again, very traditional white work pieces, and with that Punto Antico drawn thread work, and that's got a little bit of 3D there, so that might be Punto d'Ago rather than Punto Antico. And Tessa, we'll follow Tessa around to the other side of the gallery, and we're going to look at a style from right down the south of Italy. Now we can... Okay,
so Sicilian drawn thread work.
Yeah. Laura.
So also known as sfilato.
Yeah. So sfilato or Sicilian drawn thread work. Oh no, someone's phone's going off in the gallery. It's all good. So sfilato literally means unthreaded. So if you add an S in something in Italian, it's sort of the English equivalent of un. So unthreaded work, but mostly associated with Sicily. So Sicilian drawn thread work. And this is also known as filet or other around the world. There's a few other names for it.
Like network. So filet network. So you can see the grid. So the fibres have been withdrawn and then wrapped or corded to make a grid.
So it's quite
and then
thick.
You use the grid and fill the grid in. So take it out and then put it back in.
So this is like a little serviette piece that's been worked on, but you get a lot larger pieces. So this is a large tablecloth that, again, was produced in Sicily, but then taken to Greece by traveling agents and sold in Greece in the 1930s to a young girl getting married as part of her trousseau. So, sorry, it's a bit tricky to see this one because it's less flat, but you can see very large motifs here. And you get that sort of geometric pattern happening. And you've got a little bit of punto piatto surface stitchery as well to kind of accentuate it. So it's they're all quite different, these styles.
Yes. Gorgeous work.
That's showing a few signs of wear and tear, that piece there, but it's all good. And I'll bring you around to final piece. And again, these are very hard to pin on the boards because they're all household linens and they're not always made perfectly square. So you've got a little bit of drawn work there, and then that is accentuated with some sort of raised work.
We're just doing a podcast with America, so you just come into reception and be very quiet.
After your microphone's on. Sorry, we've got people coming in.
Sorry, workman.
It's still on. Can you mute yourself? Sorry. It's all good. So we've got Tessa's upside down face. Okay. So these are all more Sicilian drawn threadwork pieces. Your camera's on as well. Just take your camera. Oh dear. You'll have to camera off. So yeah, a lot more. Again, tassels. But you can see the household items. So you've got tablecloths, you've got doilies. This piece was a very large pillow sham and does not sit flat. So it's a combination. You can see there's reticella, sort of cutwork, satin stitch, and the Sicilian drawn thread work. So this would go on top of a pillow. So they're very functional embroideries. These.
Gorgeous. Would that piece there, the smaller piece in between, back to your left, April?
Yep, back to my left.
That piece right there, just the ends, the work on the ends was gorgeous.
So you can see there's actually, I think that's all done in the one color, sort of two very slightly different shades that they've gone back over. Bring you up here, they've used a second color, some blue in there.
Oh.
And just to sort of accentuate the patterns there. So again, quite simple color-wise, but really no aspect. So
Tessa,
that's really the
Tessa, I get as I look at that, in terms of skill level, seems to really not be much different from hardanger in terms of what you have to do in terms of manipulating threads.
That's right. So again, it's all in the preparation of the fabric. So being careful with removing your threads and which ones you leave behind, which ones you take out, and try not to cut the wrong ones.
Right.
This is a lovely bit because you can see the sort of it's got a bit of a nice subtle sheen to the stitches because you can see them going in and out of the grid there. So rather than being all in one direction, you can see there it's got that lovely mottled effect. So we've sort of gone from north to south. We've done, Verona and Tuscany, and then come down to Sicily, right down the bottom there. So that is the bulk of the stitches. Is there anything anyone like to see again or go back to?
I don't know, Beth, you got something you want to revisit?
Well, I like the Reticella. I've got a piece that I've got to do that on, so.
Well, I'll swing back around to it.
Yeah, that's gorgeous stuff.
And I don't know if your listeners would be familiar with the books that Giuliana Bonpadre has produced. So if anyone's wanting to learn how to do Reticella, this is it.
Yeah. So Tessa runs a shop in Sydney. She's the girl to recommend you the best book. And this is the lady we were talking about who's pioneered that revival in Italy, pioneered that colourful technique as well as the revival.
She has a book. There's a book on the coloured one as well. But if you're wanting to start, this is it.
Okay, so I'll zoom in on that one for your listeners. So Giuliana Buonpadre, Gli Antichi, Il Reticello. And is it in English or is it in Italian?
It's in English and French and Italian.
English, French, Italian. So you can learn multiple languages whilst learning your stitch. This is the gift that keeps on giving.
We call that multi-layered education there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, you can never really get enough of these people.
Well, that's just the. I just so enjoy the visual texture that's built into all of that. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, and wait, and it's weaving those threads back in. It to get the tension correct, and then you're trying to end a thread or start a thread and make sure it's right. That's my difficulty.
Let's see. Nooper, yes, please, right around the corner. I don't know around the corner what.
I think she wanted to see this too.
Oh, okay. This one, Nooper. I don't know. Got to wait for the delay to catch up. So, April, give us a little background about the gallery and putting this together. And just a couple of people wondered where this, where your gallery is, so on and so forth. So just give us kind of a rundown, your sales pitch about who you are, what you are, and what you do. Oh, you went mute. I can't hear you, April.
We're back. Okay.
There.
Can't keep me down. So this is Gallery 76, what we're known as, but we are inside the Embroiderers Guild of New South Wales. So we have a centre here, and it's got we've got a library, textile library, we've got research rooms, workshop rooms, we've got our historic collection, and then the gallery goes up 3 stories. So this is just the downstairs gallery we've been in today. Sometimes we spill over into a multi-story exhibition depending on what it is. So we have a new exhibition every month, and often these will be contemporary embroiderers from Australia or around the world, and they will use the gallery space for solo or group exhibitions. But occasionally we do our own internal exhibitions like this Italian one, and we will source works from our own collection or from our members. So this is a mix of things from our collection and from our lovely members. So we've got next 2 months, we've got some external exhibitors bringing in beautiful embroidered pieces, more contemporary. And then in November, we'll switch back to an historic exhibition, and we're doing historic Chinese embroidery. And then in next February, that we chatted about, Gary, we've got a big festival of lace, and that will be contemporary lace and historical lace from our members, from the collection, from every corner of the globe. So that's a much bigger one to organize.
Yes.
Let me see if I can spin you around again. I'll show you around a little bit. So
before you go back to that piece you were on last, because that's the one that Nooper was wanting you to just rest the camera on right there. I think that one.
Can do that. So as I was sort of starting to say, this one was made by the same lady who made that big pink bedspread, but not in the 40s. This was a recent one she's made, and she has made 18 of these for her grandchildren. So this is one of 18, and I think she's still going.
I'll send her my piece. She can finish it for me.
And she's in her late 80s now, so she is still going strong, and it's the most, the dolls can vary in complexity, but you can see here they've got, hang on, to zoom in a bit more for you. You can see fingers and fastenings and belts.
Oh yeah.
And so that's just one little corner. And the hems here, this is called a rolled hem, which is quite tricky to do, but it's very, very neat finish. And a lot of the sort of homeware pieces will have this rolled hem edge. And again, the sort of drawn thread border.
Yeah.
So that's that one.
Work is stunning.
Yeah,
okay.
It's been very fun, actually.
Yeah. So then, what inspires you to put this together? Just on your list of topics to cover, or?
Oops. So we're in quite an. I'm trying to hold this up. I'm going to bring you around, and I'm going to prop you up because my arms have finally hit that point.
Okay.
When I'm shaking a little bit. I haven't been to the gym in weeks, Gary.
Oh,
This is the
okay.
closest I've got. So it sort of depends on sort of what's going on. So we are in quite an Italian area of Sydney, and so every year in August, there's normally a big festival called Ferragosto, is a traditional Italian festival, and there'll be a huge like street parades, restaurants will be giving out free samples. It's an Italian extravaganza, and so we decided to run this in August because to sort of be part of that. But of course, this is the year that festival has been cancelled.
Of course.
So now we are bringing the party. And they're doing a Ferragosto at home. So people are going to decorate their driveways with like Italian colors. So we'll still get a lot of fun happening around here.
It's a sort of festival that 150,000 people would go to in one street. So
not the year.
Yeah.
So that was the inspiration for it when we thought of this, 18 months ago.
Right.
Because we're normally working about a year out. We'll be like, okay, this time next year we plan this exhibition. And so that's normally how we roll. We had a couple of we had a sort of friend of the guild called Margaret Lee, who writes a lot of the Chinese embroidery books, published a new book. So we thought, hey, let's do a Chinese embroidery exhibition, tie it up with a book launch for her, have a great event around that. Again, Sydney has a huge number of Chinese immigrants now, and so that's another strong cultural influence here, like Italian. And so we thought it'd be nice to kind of celebrate that with embroidery, because it's always been beautiful to see how people from different countries sort of bond over embroidery. And we had some Afghani ladies last year, and they had very, very little English. Mostly they're illiterate, and they were bonding with the guild ladies just by everyone's pointing and smiling and laughing and gesturing over these beautiful embroideries, even with the language barrier. And so I think doing things like the Italian and the Chinese and the Afghani, it's a really good thing for the community, as and for us people who like embroidery to enjoy a new style of it. Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Before you go, can I just mention this blog? It's written by a lady in Canada.
Because we're so international around here.
Yes. but if your listeners are really interested in Italian needlework, it's Italian-needlework.blogspot.com. And it's well worth checking out, that one.
Okay.
And she also gives you places where you can have lessons, such as in Sicily, if you want to do Sicilian work, when you can travel again.
Yeah. Well, and I was gonna ask the question, if people want to do online classes, Tessa, your shop offer that? Do we offer them through the guild? Talk about that.
We haven't got anything online at this stage. It's something we're looking at.
Yeah.
We haven't really had to close down at the moment, but just now with what's happening in Victoria, it's something we're going to have to go to.
We're hitting our second wave here in Australia, so we've been very good, and now we've all sort of still been creeping along, running classes as normal. But I'm sure there are online classes, but I suspect often the books are so well laid out that they're often the easiest way to get started.
Yeah. Okay. Is there some kind of a book that of the exhibit? I should ask this ahead of time.
I'm working on it, Gary. I'm halfway through it. I'll put together a PDF just with some of the main styles and like a little sample photo to give you jog everyone's memory on what the styles were we looked at, but it won't be a fully comprehensive image of all the pieces. But I'll send that to you, and you can link it to your listeners when it's done.
Great. Terrific. Yep. Beth, are you seeing any other questions? I haven't seen anything.
Just where they could buy the books that they were interested in.
I think they're all online.
They are all online.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure, because I stock them, but I'm sure you can probably find them somewhere in US that will reduce the postage costs.
Yeah.
All right, Kim, I think you need to order some books in.
And if you're listening in Australia, you can come to Embroiderers Guild or to Stitch, and we will hook you up with the goods. So.
Okay, and then Tessa, your shop is Stitch?
That's it. It's called Stitch. So we're located just on the lower north shore of Sydney, about 10 minutes from the Sydney Harbour Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
For context for you all, yeah.
Yes.
And if you're familiar with Inspirations magazine, I'm on the back cover.
Oh, okay.
She's famous, yeah.
Okay. I'll look for that. All right. Well, ladies, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for bearing with our turning the yeah.
Wonderful.
Coming in. But it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope to do it again.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. Thanks to everybody, and thanks to Kim and Sassy Jacks for sponsoring. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.